Welcome to our podcast, What Happened to the Lucky Country? Welcome to our podcast, What's Wrong with the Federal Government, Part 2. Welcome. What's Wrong with the Federal Government, Part 2. We got so many comments about the first podcast that focused on the electoral system and politicians, there is a lot more that people want opinions on. So we've come up with Part 2. So the ageing population. The Australian government spends $151 billion on Centrelink, covering 8.5 million customers. This is a complex issue where dignity, family and historical expectations have been set. In Australia, there are about 4.5 tax-paying workers for every person aged 65 and over. So there is 4.5 people paying tax to every retiree. However, the predictions indicate this ratio will shrink to just 2.7 workers per retiree over the next 4 decades due to the nation's ageing population. So let's break that down. There's only going to be 2.7 people working for every retiree. Add to that that only 50% of people in Australia contribute more than they take from the system. So 2.7 workers per retiree really should be 1.35 workers per retiree. That's a bit scary. Let's break that down some more. The 40% reduction in people contributing to the national purse. The tax system is heavily skewed to the rich, paying disproportionately for everyone. Although media attempts and scuttlebutt is that lots of people avoid paying tax, but the tax office only identifies 91 people who in the rich category that pay no tax. Again, 50% of Australians contribute more than they take. Only 50% of Australians contribute more than they take. The Australian income is $830 billion, in which $151 billion, or 18%, goes on pensions. By the end of the decade, that $151 billion is predicted to raise to $180 billion. It's documented less and less people will be working as the population goes into retirement, 40% less than 4 decades, needing higher tax contributions or increasing the hurdle where the pension and other Centrelink services are available. There are only 3 options. Do one, do the other, or do both. If my numbers are correct, tax has to increase by 40% on the remaining workers. Now that's impractical. The second option is Centrelink must reduce spending from $151 billion by $300 billion. Obviously, you can't reduce $151 billion by $300 billion. So this just doesn't add up. It won't work. Successive governments have seen the problem and done nothing about it. It's we cannot afford government pension schemes as they are now. Governments are too fearful to discuss this, and therefore we are financially driving fast towards a brick wall. We need a 50-year plan. A 50-year plan would give us certainty, especially to the youth of today. For instance, will there be a pension for me when I retire? No. Pension age must increase year on year. The asset level where pensioners qualify must be raised year on year. The pension itself should be kept for the few who need it. Most old people I have known plan for the pension, but if you know there's going to be no pension, you would do things differently. Self-contributions or your super payments are now 12%. And this will be a little short. Maybe a number close to 18% will mean you are self-sufficient in retirement, which is hard during the cost of living drama we're going through now. You can't ask people to put more money into super right now. It just won't work. And living standards will have to fall. You can't keep spending money we don't have and expect our quality of life to increase. If you're under 40 now, there will be no pension, so plan for it now. How to manage your superannuation. This is really important. We've said plan for no pension. Start super early. I'm a fan of not contributing too much to super while you have a mortgage, but after that, you should ramp up tax contributions significantly. If there are tax-free options with your employee, which I had at one stage, use them. It's always good to get that extra bit of money in. And if you can over-contribute, do so weekly as soon as you can. If you're young, I used to say 45 was the age to get a financial plan, but I think 35 is now the new age. I think you need to have a financial plan at 35 for your retirement. Deciding it too late means you don't have the time to accumulate the wealth. Keep your risk profile high while you are young and reduce it to low gradually as you age. What that means is the money you put in superannuation usually only have one choice: high, medium, low risk. High risk means high risk. It could disappear, but it could give you great returns. But as you age, you can't afford to lose money. Self-managed super funds are really only for those over $1 million, I think. And some people use high numbers, but it gives you flexibility, but at a cost. And you can get that flexibility under some superannuation companies. For instance, offering the ability to buy shares that you dictate. That gives you some flexibility to do what you want with your super without being too high risk. Be active in managing your super, even if it's an industry fund. Superannuation should be something you actively manage as an investment from 30 years old. It's something that you need to manage. 5% difference in return from 30 years on is a lot of money. I haven't worked that out. Pick a provider with 10 plus years of good returns, although this is no guarantee of future returns. So what I mean by that is they have to publish their rates on 5-year returns, 2-year returns, 1-year returns, and 10-year returns. Pick one that has averaged these days about 9.5% over 10 years. Now that's no guarantee of going forward getting the same contribution, but it is a good indication that it's a well-run company and supplying benefits to their customers. These maintenance have to last you. So some people are going into retirement, blow the money. In fact, they were encouraged by some successive governments to do so. Travel, pay your children's house off, and then go on the dole, go on the pension. This is not a good idea and won't be a good idea in the future. It is already law that you can't give away money to your children after you retire and then get the pension. If you run your own company, pay super. I know dozens of self-managed people who have their own businesses who don't contribute to their super. And I'm not sure what they think is going to happen. But you have to contribute to super. It's difficult in a small company, but do it anyway. Public servants. There should be less public servants driven by centralisation. We should be targeting 10% less public servants every 5 years forever. There should be centralisation of certain systems. Every state government and territory has the same systems. There might be different brands, there probably are different brands, but rationalise them, centralise them, drive the staff out, get the cost down. I did some work for one unnamed government department once, and the rates they offered were too low. it was a learning for me because it's an interesting problem where public servants earn, for instance, over $800,000 to be the CEO of NBN when he has no business experience. And when you pay for monkeys, you get monkeys. So when you talk about that problem with a Queensland payroll nurses transition project that fails many, many times, you find that you've got monkeys on the project. We've got to get away from this idea that the government has good staff. They have loyal and honest staff. I'll give you that. I will not give you that they are hugely competent. If they are hugely competent, they would be in the private industry earning 3 times as much money. And no one gets sacked for this incompetence. The poor project management rolling out projects, mismanaged billions of dollars in Victoria being wasted by mismanagement of projects. And nothing happens, no one gets sacked for incompetence. There should be a turnover target annually to weed out poor performers. Let's face it, when it comes to complex projects, you need the best manager to manage them. Pay an extra $500,000 for a project manager that will save you $10 billion on the project is worth it. The government does not think that. Public service projects. Governments should not decide what projects need to be done. I know that's the basis for our government, but they are tainted by unions, by their electorate, by other influential parties to do projects and roads in areas that just don't need it. Victoria builds roads nobody wants. There's a new tunnel here that's hardly used. It builds debt that nobody wants. This is rampant fraud by any measure. And Victoria has more debt than the rest of Australia combined. Victorians should be so proud. The only happy people in Victoria are unions. A central national body should prioritise roadworks to ensure roads across Australia are all given equal focus and prioritised according to need. Governments are not objective, and leaving it to them means we end up with, if anyone's driven across the Victorian-New South Wales border, you'll know what I mean. You drive across the border from the Victorian side, you get onto the New South Wales side, and it's totally different. The second issue with public servant projects, governments can't run and write contracts. Again, use competent staff who do not reside in the government or have real-world experience. The $15 billion rort in Victoria should have been avoided by good contract management. We obviously did not have the skills to do it. So don't try and do things, government, that you are not qualified to do. Get experts in. Popularist voting. We need to be careful in Australia. We are already seen as racist by the world. And populist voting, like One Nation, who have few policies except, they don't call it one white Australia, they call it one culture or something. But it's a white Australia policy. Will not help us invite investment and grow our economy. Some people hope One Nation will be successful. Others will leave Australia if she is. Trump is a good example of popularist voting. No policies, no honesty, breaks the law, touches women, and has maybe done so much damage to America that made his friends and himself rich. When it comes to the populist voting, America may never recover. It's in decline. China is in ascension. The two have been at economic war for 30 years. 28 years of that, America didn't know they were at war, economic war. So, given now the worst time in history that Trump could have been in charge. Housing. The Australian government promised to build 1.2 million more homes to combat immigration and to push housing prices down to help first home buyers into the sector. They're not going to do it. There is no way. I'm not sure we want it either. Successive governments have been drunk on power and growth through immigration. Immigrants are more likely to vote Labor, bring money and will work doing some of the jobs Australians won't. So that's all very positive. This self-serving government like the Indian immigrants because they vote Labor. And while the country looks financially better with immigration because it needs scale and money to grow, there are wider and wider cracks in our society, but a few things are happening. Immigrants are beating Australians to buying houses, creating the housing crisis. It's not sensible to have growth forever to keep the books looking good, which leads to my final point. Australians are already a little stressed about the number of immigrants. It's not a racial thing, and everyone will say it is, but it's not. The number of immigrants creating negative rhetoric like the lies exposed by One Nation. So this government has caused all these problems. Some blame more by this government, but alas, past governments are not innocent. I've said it before, to kill the two birds, let's open immigration to the Pacific only, as they are concerned about global warming and sea rising, and this will only appease the negativity that China is creating in the Pacific. So we kill two birds with one stone. More specific skills-based immigration is necessary. Unfortunately, we need to be a larger economy in this competitive world, and immigration is an important part of that. But let's get the Pacific countries involved. I think they will love it, and we get good people that way. Cost of living. The cost of living crisis is caused by two issues: rising interest rates, which we will discuss, and the Iran war, which is illogical, and I don't have enough time to explain how stupid that is. Interest rates are driven higher or lower by the RBA. Their job is to stop inflation and support economic prosperity. Essentially, all they do is measure what is happening in the market and increase rates as a brake, or reduce rates as encouragement to business, or reduce rates to encourage business, that's right. It is an organisation separate from government but is controlled by government, but not directly. Let me explain. The RBA is driven by interest rates, public spending, immigration, and government debt, all which are controlled by the government. From author Kate Wagner, in response to the year 25 budget, in its most general sense, inflation is the rate in which prices change over a given time period. According to the RBA, the main causes of inflation fall into three broad categories: demand pull, cost pull, and inflation expectations. Government spending that provides additional money to people or organisations can in turn mean that money is used to purchase more goods and services. That is, to demand and increase prices. The demand pull mechanism. Economist Chris Richardson has estimated that for every $7 billion in additional government spending, the RBA would need to lift the cash rate by 0.25%. So what that means is the more the government spend, the higher interest rates you pay. So in summary, government handouts drive higher growth. So the RBA raises interest rates. So to reduce the petrol excise, you thought the government was helping you. It wasn't. And this principle can be applied to a lot of handouts. Good government is actually being very cautious in how they use their spend during downturns so interest rates stay low. The government never got the memo. So what that means is you think you've got a gift from the government, and actually you haven't. The spend is driving interest rates up, or the RBA caution up. So the RBA push interest rates up, and you pay more for your mortgage. Productivity. A simple output divided by input. And any country worth its while will try and make more goods with less, increasing delivery of goods with the same people using better processes and technologies. Why do we want lower productivity? Because we're living in a competitive world. That should be why do we want higher productivity. Because we're living in a higher competitive world, and the better we perform, the more time we can be off work and the more we can spend with our dollar. Productivity in Australia is going backwards. Only by 0.6%, but the trend is slightly down, not up. Separate to this point, the unions are driving less work hours, less output and higher salaries. Unions have a wonderful history in Australia, solving safety issues, sticking up for individuals who need it. Most unions act on these grounds, but some unions are advocating the opposite of productivity growth. So how do these two issues play out? With some labour unions, they're supposedly illegal, act with criminal intention and are protected by the Labor government. The Victoria government is accused of overseeing a $15 billion project with rorts and fraud from the CFMEU. By the way, the Victorian government rejects calls for everyone investigating this point. Nothing to see here, and the worst perpetrator of nothing to see here is the media, who have a crooked neck looking the other way. I don't know why they look the other way, because this is a great story, and people should go to jail. Salaries that are higher than normal, work hours that are less than normal, will drive sector failures, while Ansett was driven out of business not by the unions. They contributed significantly and ruthlessly, reducing hours and increasing pay. If we don't clean up the unions, economic prosperity for the lucky country could be over. Tax reform. I'm getting really distressed reading this stuff because I'm worried about my kids. It goes without saying about tax reform that the more you work, the more you should earn. Why would you work harder for nothing? Doing long hours and having to operate two jobs should be supported, as we need jobs for fulfilled growth and productivity. Tax reform is supposed to make it more personally financially beneficial to work harder and earn more. But instead of this, which was legislated, the Labor government put the cost at the foot of the business executives, the higher earners. Now I can hear you say, they should pay, they're bastards. They earn astronomical salaries. But let's just take a look at that. And some of them are not doing their part through the use of lawyers and significant financial tools, although the ATO documents that only 91 rich people in Australia pay no tax through these mechanisms. So there's a bit of anti-establishment talk in the media about this, but there's only 91 as listed by the ATO. As previously mentioned, 50% of people in Australia take more than they give. That means they take more services from the government through roads and Centrelink than they pay in tax. But high-salaried individuals, the top 50%, the ones that contribute more than they take from the country, are keeping this country afloat. Why would we piss them all off? If they stop, we starve. If they move offshore, we don't get the tax benefits anymore. We're seeing companies, I'm hearing, wanting to go to New Zealand and wanting to go to Singapore. If we drive all these companies out of Australia because the tax system is so bad, why would they leave their staff here? They'll take their staff with them. They'll pay tax in another jurisdiction, and we are fucked. There should be incentive to earn across the board, and we are a country that naturally cuts down tall poppies, but we can't, as noted before, we need them. I'm not talking about the Reinhardts. I'm talking about the IT manager on 150,000 who disproportionately earns so you can live. We need a balanced tax system to encourage people to work hard, increase productivity, and we had one in legislation. But Labor removed it and moved all the tax to the people that contribute. Next time you complain about someone earning higher amounts of money, let's remember, most of you contribute less than you take. These people pay for the roads and hospitals. Maybe let's go a little lighter on them.